Greetings to the brightest audience in the country. This is Real Science Radio. I'm Fred Williams.
And I'm Doug McBurney, host of the Weekly Worldview, amateur comedian, Bible student. It's great to be with you, Fred, talking about real science on Friday.
So, Doug, we're honored this week to be able to speak to one of the fathers of the modern creation movement and a man who is not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, Dr. Carl Baugh. So Dr. Baugh is the founder and director of Creation Evidence Museum of Texas in Glen. He is the discoverer and excavation director of 16 dinosaurs.
Wow.
And after more than 40 years of work and research in creation science and ministry, he directed the construction of a 1/20th scale replica of the Ark, now in the museum, and he holds a U.S. patent on the Gopherwood process.
What?
Yeah.
The Gopherwood Okay, I've got to find out.
Yeah. So Dr. Baugh lectures internationally on evidence for scientific creation on television and radio and in schools and in churches. He stands firmly against the theory of evolution and for the biblical account of creation.
Amen.
So Dr. Baugh, welcome back to Real Science Radio.
It's a pleasure to be with you, gentlemen. It's been a while since I've been on. My congratulations for your continuing to declare the truth.
Well, that's awesome. Well, we're happy to have you on declaring it with us. I checked your Wikipedia page when we were trying to determine if we should have you on the show. And when we looked at your Wikipedia page, we realized that all the right people hate you. So we've got to have you on the show. Wikipedia does their best to disparage anyone who bears witness to the truth, and their hack job against you is just anyway. It's par for the course, and you should consider it a badge of honor. They do mention though that you were born in 1936. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that you graduated Abilene High School in Abilene, Texas.
As an honor graduate, yes.
Yep.
Wow, that's not far from where I grew up out in West Texas. And so how do you stay so sharp, having been born in 1936, Dr. Baugh?
Well, number one, you believe the truth and you sell it not. I try to read the scriptures daily. I try to learn some new scientific data daily. And I try to communicate something daily. And you know, I'm almost 87 years of age. And I feel like a young man, 29 years of age, except my body aches a little bit. So I just pull it along because I have greater things to do than to listen to those aches and pains. And by the way, being the target of universal criticism, not just in the United States, but globally, because of the evidence that we've discovered here at Glen, being such a target actually puts you in good company. There's a long list in scriptures of those who bought the truth and wouldn't sell it, but by well-doing, they put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. And to try to answer every objection, even though there is a truthful answer to all of these objections, to try to answer them is specifically what the evolutionists want. They want to consume a guy with petty things, but I have better things to do. So I had my own television program for 11 years, and when it was aired in prime time, there were, on average, 7 million viewers. Wow. And somebody's listening. I'm glad your audience is listening. Anyhow, enough of my credentials or lack thereof.
No, let's not move off your credentials yet, because I simply have to know, what is the story behind the Gopherwood? A patent, is it?
Oh, yes.
A patent on the Gopherwood process.
Yes, trademark and patent office. I hold a patent literally on how to build Noah's Ark, because Noah's Ark was the frontispiece for the patent. And for years, I searched and colleagues researched any concept that would give us identification of Gopherwood.
Yes.
And the nearest that could be found was from a Jewish professor who said, we have a lot of Gopherwood in Israel. I said, okay, what is it? He said, it's grafting. It's a process. It's grafting where you grow it as one unit. But that did not explain how the ark was built. That was the concept. So I went to the Hebrew word, and the Hebrew word is not a species or variety of wood. The Hebrew word is an engineering process.
Yes.
It means to house in. But the context that God gave to Noah verbally, it demonstrates that there was wood that had to be used. And I continued the research and found that it has to be a porous ring hardwood so that it can be penetrated with the appropriate sealant. So what's the sealant? And of course, most people think it was tar. But tar is a post-flood 32 molecule substance that in no way, it might insulate, but it in no way could hold together under the dynamic forces of the flood, the vessel itself. So basically, the adhesive turns out to be it has to be familiar with the wood process at all. Birch bark resin turns out to be the perfect candidate. And the Neanderthals, if you'll Google Neanderthals and birch bark resin, you'll find that the Neanderthals are given credit for discovering superglue.
Yeah,
and
right.
They took birch bark resin, heated it anaerobically between 645 and 725 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, that's astounding. See, those people had larger brains than we have.
Right.
They had to work in an isolated post-flood context.
Yeah, fully human.
But to be, totally human, superior human. And not only did they invent or are credited with inventing textiles and pottery and the supermarts, literally along the river there in Germany and elsewhere in Europe, they had small guilds set up and people could get what they wanted. All of this has been discovered in archaeology.
Wow.
Yeah.
But for them to be able to take birch bark resin and reduce it anaerobically, that is, without any free oxygen getting to it, between 645 and 725 degrees Fahrenheit, is a process requiring astute scientific application.
Yes.
Because if you don't heat it 645, it won't catalyze. That is, the molecules won't fall apart. If you heat it above 725, they won't polymerize. That is, they won't reform new molecular structures.
Yeah, we have shows in the past on the genius of ancient man. And, there's scientific evidence for the intelligence being greater the farther back you go each generation.
Right.
Just the IQ levels. And so you keep going back, there's fewer mutations, less of a genetic load. And these people were geniuses. I can't imagine the genius of Moses himself. He probably had a PhD in mechanical engineering, even electrical engineering, all kind, architect. People don't really think about
had
the
the
genius.
Qualifications.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Well, that actually answers a major question. Why are we dumbing down? Why is our generation totally dependent on things rather than having the ability innately to think? And as you mentioned, genetic load. Yes, geneticists are admitting now in the technical literature that each generation accumulates approximately 100 new mutational changes in our DNA. And while we're still functioning, we have 16,000 errant mutations in our DNA. And when it reaches or approaches 20,000, the human race will have destroyed itself. It cannot reproduce. And we're increasing the rate of mutational damage, the genetic load. And that answers a major question. Why are we so dumb today? A few decades ago, those brilliant engineers and scientists that got us to the moon and back did not have the computerization that we currently have. So the new process will depend on much better AV and contact and electronics and computerization. But they use basically slide rules.
Right.
And incidentally, Robert Helfenstein, aerospace engineer, who designed the central control system for the command module of the Apollo spacecraft, was one of our finest contributors academically and financially. Bob Helfenstein, and he and a number of others were creationists and helped us get to the moon and back.
Yep.
Wow.
So, Dr. Baugh, you're calling from your museum, correct, down in Glen Rose, Texas. Can you give us an update? What's the latest? I assume the museum is still open and doing well?
It is open, doing well. In fact, more visitors than ever. Great. Even after the non-COVID episode. We now have, as a gift from a very fine family, a professional laboratory. We have 6 microscopes, including a scanning electron microscope, and those are primarily reserved for universities.
Oh, yeah.
But we have a scanning electron microscope. We're able to look inside certain processes, near cellular processes. We have another piece of equipment where we can generate sonoluminescence, sound into light. And that takes us back to Genesis chapter 1.
Yeah.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light.
Yeah.
Right. Men, in our lab, we have actually generated light from sound.
Wow.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that's what Genesis 1:1 and 1:2 and 3 describe.
That is.
Where God created the earth as a sphere of water. In the presence of that water is energy, simply saying, "Let there be light," and there was light. So we, in our lab, are able to generate sound, focus specifically to a flask of water, and full spectral light comes out the other end. And here's what amazed us. I took a little photo of that when we had present one of the physicists who helped design that and got his master's from the pioneer of sonoluminescence. And what we actually did is demonstrated in the light itself. We had a red, a white, a blue, and a green. Mm-hmm. And the physicist analyzed that, the physicist who built this equipment for us, analyzed that, and we compared that to what the James Webb Space Telescope photos show of the early universe. And we have the very same light signature. Red, blue, and green generate all of the other. Those are the primary colors.
Right.
And they generate everything else. So we have that in our lab. But I think what you really are asking is we have 6 other microscopes, including 2 polarizing microscopes. And those are very, very important because polarizing microscopes, the polarized light goes through material.
Right.
And it changes the color. And it changes collagen, which is tissue.
Yep.
We're more than a half collagen. It changes the color from aquamarine to gold, and if you change the angle of reflection of the polarized light through the lens, it changes back to the other colors.
So you're seeing collagen,
we have,
basically.
as you know, all of these dinosaur remains.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Right.
And in our own lab,
that's right,
we are able to put those, to section those in our lab, then section them. Men, we have found in over 80% of the specimens in our lab collagen, which is technically soft tissue.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Brian Thomas. I was going to say Brian Thomas at ICR has a really vast list that he got from Bob Enyart and him worked on all the publications that have come out on finding soft tissue. And this isn't, National Enquirer. This is Harvard University, Stanford,
Oh, yes.
major journals. They're all reporting on this incredible find, the find of the century that so many people still don't know about it. I'll ask, maybe a coworker, hey, have you ever heard about soft tissue being found in dinosaur bones? Probably 1 out of 10 will know that that's happened, which is really a shame because, Dr. Baugh, this is going to get back also into your research that you did years ago with, dinosaur human footprints with dinosaurs. I mean, and I want to revisit the Paluxy stuff, because I know there's going to be plenty of our listeners that are new that aren't super familiar with that. But even now after Paluxy, and that was incredible evidence in itself, just finding soft tissue in dinosaur bones, it's proving that dinosaurs aren't millions of years old. I can go to Wikipedia right now, the version for atheists, and they'll still have on there, well, if creation is true, then you should at least find DNA in dinosaur bones, because DNA can't last that long. Well, guess what? They found DNA in dinosaur bones. So
that is precisely correct.
And they haven't corrected that wiki
straight-
article yet. Every time I give a presentation, I'll say, hey, I'm going to add the date. And I go look it up, and sure enough, there it is. If dinosaurs lived with man, if dinosaurs aren't that old, you should find DNA in them, and we don't. Oh, wait a minute, we do find DNA.
We
in them.
have, right?
Yeah,
And the
Well,
silence is deafening.
yeah,
The silence it should be the biggest story in science in the history of science, really.
yes,
Yeah, because the average person on the street can understand the fallacy that evolution has presented, and it's a proof concept, and they fail the concept. Well, you're the first audience to hear what I'm going to say now.
oh great,
In our lab, and Brian Thomas visits our lab often and finds soft tissue in our lab. In our lab, we're able to take a specimen and thin section that and make the slide, and within a matter of 90 minutes, examine it under the polarizing microscope concept, articles that we have, the actual apparatus. Here's the news. We have found collagen not only in dinosaurs that are like T-Rex, supposed to be 65 million years old, or Acrocanthosaurus, supposed to be 110 million years old, or Edmontosaurus, 120 million years old, or Stegosaurus, 140 million years old. Those are all assigned ages. They do not exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
But we, for the first time, have found soft tissue, collagen, in the stomach contents of a Moroccan trilobite that is assigned an age 530 million years.
wow,
Now,
that's huge.
Now, before you run with that concept,
Wow.
collagen's only found in vertebrates, and of course, trilobites, bugs, sea bugs.
Right.
They're not vertebrates.
yeah, they're invertebrate.
However, collagen has been found in worms, and we found collagen at the edge of one of the trilobites that we analyzed, and the little tiny chips of collagen in the stomach contents of the Moroccan trilobite, assigned an age 530 million years.
Wow.
So evolution is bankrupt. It just
Absolutely.
doesn't have the academic commitment. It has a philosophic commitment to guard itself, and it is a form of self-worship. It does not have the academic commitment to admit it is bankrupt.
Mm. Well, speaking of academic commitment, one of the things that caught my attention on your Wikipedia page was their disparaging of Pacific International University. They call it an unaccredited university that you started. And so I just want to, I wonder if the editors at Wikipedia disparage the people who founded Harvard, because Harvard was also an unaccredited university that was started by a man or a few men. Anyway, Every university was started by men.
Yeah.
They all were.
I did not. I am not the founder of Pacific International University.
Oh no! They say the presidents. Yes.
Oh yes. Well, long years afterward, I accepted the presidency temporarily, but its ministry had concluded. And when I received my PhD in educational administration from Pacific College of Graduate Studies, it was accredited in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even try to defend any of that. By well-doing, you put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. And
amen.
And, I have two other doctorates. I have an accredited doctorate in biblical archaeology, and I have a doctorate in theology from Louisiana Baptist University, which chooses not to be accredited because accreditation gives constraints.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm not against accreditation, but I'm in favor of doing good work.
Sure, and the accredited universities are churning out a generation of mindless, empty suits.
Yeah.
And so,
and I wanted to mention, because while I was driving in today to do this radio interview, I was listening to this Bible study, and it mentioned Dagon. It was one of the gods. When the Philistines took in the ark, and at night Dagon would tumble over.
Oh, right.
And eventually his head fell off. Well, basically that's half fish, half man. And
right.
The guy leading the Bible study mentions, it reminds me of that Darwin fish, with on the car.
That's right, on the
with
car.
the legs on it,
Yeah.
half fish, half man. It's a religion. It's not science. It's a religion, and things just don't change
it
under
is
the
a religion,
sun.
And it is self-worship. Actually, Charles Darwin suggested an idea that that caught on, and the concept was he believed there was an intelligence that could be recognized in the universe, and essentially it was equivalent to the mind of man. And thus, the principle is the universe created itself, and because it had the latent potential as the mind of man, then it drove itself from one form of life to another until finally, here's the key, it recognized its own existence in the mind of man. Recognized its own existence. So it is a self-worshiping religion.
Yeah. It's kind of like a couple of weeks ago, we had that interview with Dr. Phil Dennis, and how Einstein thought that all existence was within man's mind.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
That is the self-worship.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Dr. Baugh.
It is self-worship, and it is a religion.
Absolutely. So I wanted, just for our younger people in the audience, to get back to, if you could kind of take us back to the Paluxy footprints. And I know there was some shenanigans that went on there. There was controversy, a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
I remember when I first came into the creation movement, maybe, 20 some odd years ago, it was kind of really escalating back then. Could you just walk us through that again really quick? Just, again, for our younger audience,
Surely.
And the importance of, why there was so much controversy.
Yes. Well, it is central to the conflict between creation and evolution as explaining life origins and life progressions. Back in 1918, Charlie Moss had just gone through World War I, returned to the county, and as he was recuperating from the stress of war, he spent some time along the Paluxy River. And he discovered human footprints. Now, in his absence, George Adams had discovered some dinosaur footprints. So Charlie Moss rediscovered some additional dinosaur footprints. The tridactyl prints, three-toed prints, were discovered by George Adams. But it was Charlie Moss who discovered the large footprints that ultimately were assigned to Sauropsid and Protellus, the tallest of all the dinosaurs by current reckoning. And he made huge footprints, big round footprints like huge elephant prints, but they were not elephants. Mm-hmm. But adjacent to those, Charlie Moss found the first human footprints and described them. And we have in safety deposit his original letter describing those. And that's what you do in science. You make a discovery, an analysis, you document it, and then you try to replicate and make an application. Charlie Moss was not a scientist, but he was an honest individual. Well, that was all of the old timers believed that, and so the film was made by Films for Christ, the film Footprints in Stone, and it was shown far and wide, and it demolished evolutionary theory, that is, having man and dinosaur living contemporaneously. So the evolutionists themselves began to do everything possible, and they hired individuals whose names I will not mention. You've already mentioned some of these names. They hired individuals to dog the steps of anyone involved in this research who assumed they were genuine. And so we were able, I was able to come down to the Paluxy and literally introduce new original excavations that were documented. And with these excavations, we removed a limestone ledge 7 to 9 inches thick and performed original documented excavations. And it blew my mind because at that time, I was a long-age creationist. There was a time in the past I was an evolutionist, and but that's long, long decades ago. But at that point in time, it was like 1982. I was a long-age creationist.
Wow.
And I didn't believe what I was excavating, but I had to accept it. So I didn't sleep for 4 days and nights. We had a trail of dinosaur footprints that I had excavated with the assistance of some good, hard-working men. And then I tried to close the excavations, and so the team said, let's just remove one more slab of rock. We'll do all the work. You tell us what to do. That's a pretty good deal. So at the back edge of that slab of rock that was removed, after we excavated very delicately through the marl, clay marl, very slowly with soft wooden brushes, we found a near, on a scale of 1 to 10, probably a 9.5 human footprint with a great toe, second, third, fourth little toe, metatarsal arch, medial and lateral sections of the longitudinal arch. It was pretty good size. It was almost 18 inches in length, but it was 14 inches from a dinosaur footprint that we had excavated just a few hours before.
Wow.
And that's what blew my mind. So I continued the excavations, and we found, in order to document academically, you have to have a trail. An isolated track is not accepted academically. So that was a left, and we had a right, left, right again. Then I called the press for just one interview if they wanted to send anyone down. To my amazement, they flew down by helicopter. And the next morning, I was getting on the plane to go back to St. Louis. And front page, Fort Worth Star Telegram, track step on evolution.
Oh, wow.
And I'm front cover. And so I went back, and I tried to ignore it the best I could and get back to work, but they called from Canada, called from Europe. In fact, a very interesting thing, my secretary said CBS is on the line, and so I gave an interview to CBS, and right in the middle of it, she stepped up to my desk, and on a 3x5 card, she had written ABC's on the other line. So I said to CBS, Can you hold a moment? ABC's on the other line. I need to let them know that I'm giving you an interview. They said, sure. So I hoped I would push the right buttons and not disconnect them. Push the other button, ABC. Yes, would like to do. Oh, but CBS is on the other line. Can you hold until I finish the interview there? And so they did. And that night, they both had it on the national news.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I thought the good days would follow, but they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I had
battle
to
was coming.
The battle was coming. Little did I know that was central to their paradigm, and they had to destroy it. If they couldn't destroy the tracks and the evidence, they had to destroy the messenger.
Sure.
And that's what they try to do till this day. But that doesn't bother me at all. Truth is truth.
Yeah.
So I'd like for your audience to visit the museum. We have some of the original human and dinosaur footprints, and we have the Delk print, which is a human footprint being intruded by a dinosaur footprint. And we have the spiral CAT scans to show that this is not fabricated. The compression density is underneath. And then we have the Willett print, which is a pterodactyl print being stepped on by a human footprint. And this destroys evolutionary theory. So the books have been printed about it, and films have been released about it. And the truth is simply here. We have now leased the property, continue the excavations. But we're also building a biosphere to simulate the conditions where man could be so agile and where the pre-flood world could be so successful. Yeah. We are currently building that biosphere to follow up on this research of man and dinosaur, even though we're not going to be doing any medical research on human beings.
Gotcha. So, so these footprints, were they found in, I think they were found in limestone, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is.
Yeah, that's a sedimentary
layer. Not only
layer.
Found in limestone, but the layer that they're found in extends worldwide, and this is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the inclusive fossils where we've been excavating on the McFall property have worm burrows. Some of them have clams, and clam fissures where the clam could wiggle out, but the form that he made, the print that he made, the depression that he made, was recorded so fast that it's still there. And we have these by the hundreds, showing how rapidly this material lithified or cured.
As if it was buried in a flood.
Buried in a flood. And the proof of that is limestone is a result of deposition, of laying down of mud, which has the right consistency, basically calcium carbonate.
Yep.
But this layer extends and has been admitted by world-class evolutionary geologists like Eric Deger, etc., Derek Egger, and it extends worldwide. This same layer is in Israel. This same layer is in China, in Russia, Scandinavia, throughout Europe. It's in South America. It's in Canada. It's in California. It's in Australia. This very same layer that we're excavating and finding human and dinosaur footprints belts the entire globe. And the only plausible explanation for this sedimentary layer of limestone is a worldwide flood.
Exactly. Yes. So you interacted with Richard Dawkins. I think he obviously had a big interest in that since he's kind of the spokesperson for evolution. Didn't he make a trip down there, I think, with the BBC, if I recall? And I think you mentioned off air that you had talked to Stephen Jay Gould. He had visited, I recall. Can you just kind of fill us in on what happened with those guys?
Okay, let me give you the details. It was a Sunday. I was out doing what I'm supposed to do, preaching and lecturing and sharing the research and the biblical evidence and the archaeological and paleontological evidence. Stephen Jay Gould, Richard Dawkins, Charles Finsley, and another evolutionist. All of these individuals were atheists. Richard Dawkins still is. And so they came to Glen Rose.
He's still an atheist because he's still alive.
I was just going to say that. Yes. That was an interesting turn of a phrase, Dr. Baugh.
Yes.
Don't think that we didn't catch that.
You men are awake. You are now, at least. So they came to Glen Rose with the avowed purpose. They had either watched a telecast I'd made, and I have a habit of talking on television, or had listened to a radio broadcast, or had read some of the reports of what we claim to have. And they had published in the technical and popular literature that finding anything like this would destroy evolutionary theory. So they came to Glen Rose, asked where the museum, we were just a one-room log cabin at that time. And I was gone, so they called Jeannie Mack, who was alive at that time. She was the curator of the county museum. And she said, I don't know where Baugh is. His buddy Bob Summers, here's Bob's number. So she gave them Bob's number. They called Bob Summers. It was Sunday morning.
And what year is this, Dr. Baugh?
This was back in the late 80s.
Okay.
And called Bob Summers. He said, well, I'm on the way to Sunday school and church. I don't have time to go out there and open the museum. He had a key to the little one-room log cabin. And so he told his 17-year-old son, Temple, take the key, go show those guys what they want to see, lock it up, and meet us in church. So now, you know, Richard Dawkins, Stephen Gould, Niles Eldridge. No, Niles Eldridge was not here. But Charles Fensley was there at that time. Those men would never give me the time of day or read anything that a creationist would write or had to say.
Sure.
They don't bother themselves with that. They deliberately separate that from their mode of life.
Mm-hmm.
So a 17-year-old kid is the one who showed them the hammer. We have a man-made artifact in rock, Cretaceous rock, that is assigned early 140 million years in age. Assigned.
Wow.
It's flood deposit.
So T-Rexes, they didn't use hammers?
They saw the hammer and they said, impossible.
Of course.
And then we had the finger, and so Temple, they said, what's that? Finger. Well, where'd that come from? Well, it was excavated in Cretaceous limestone. Impossible.
Yeah.
Third question, what's this? Well, it's the Burdick print. We still have it. The Burdick print is a human footprint, double-jointed toes, and there are many people with the double joints. And it is deposited in Cretaceous limestone. We later had it sectioned to show that the compression density is there. So Richard Dawkins said, what's this? And Temple Summers said, well, that's a human footprint found in Cretaceous limestone. And Dawkins said, impossible. Temple Summers said, sir, I know it's possible. I helped to excavate it.
Wow.
They milled around a couple of minutes and walked out without saying another word. Just impossible. So when they were confronted with actual evidence, artifacts of evidence, there was no real explanation, and any explanation found on the internet is ad hoc explanation.
Well, Dr. Baugh, you're saying that at the time when they actually saw, they didn't demand an investigation. Wouldn't you demand an investigation to something that overthrows your entire worldview?
Well, if you were honest and truly academic, you would.
Wow.
But if you are following a religion, you accept that at all cost, and you don't want it to be scrutinized.
So they had you. They had the creationists in the palm of their hand. They could have crushed us in the early '80s by simply investigating all these lies that we were telling. That 17-year-old that 17-year-old was lying to their face, and they had us, and they let us off the hook. Why did they let us off the hook? It's shocking.
Because they're not scientifically addressing the issue.
Yes.
They're doing it philosophically, assuming a miracle, a one-time miracle.
Yeah.
But man, the amazing thing is the creator who created this universe came back and walked among us, and each of the days of creation are repeated one way or another during his lifetime. He did essentially the same thing. He created light on Mount Tabor while he was here. It's absolutely astounding.
Oh,
so,
wow.
yes.
That's a whole Bible study. I want you to come and give that Bible study at my church. That is awesome. And by the way, I just want to thank you for confirming for me. I was doing a Bible study in Genesis, and I came across the Gopherwood, the word, and I ended up spending days just chasing down, and I ended up telling my Bible study group that as best I can tell, this is wood that has been formed in some special way that I don't know. I don't know any other way to say it. And I want to thank you for helping me to improve that Bible study the next time I give it.
Yeah.
All right.
Because that was amazing.
I had to coin a term to get the patent: structural interlamination.
Structural interlamination.
Structural interlamination.
Well, that's
so that each component is structurally interlaminated with every other component, so the entire structure is one solid component.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, Dr. Baugh, if you ever do found a university, I want to send my kids there. So,
well, at my age, and the Lord has put on my plate so much to do, I'm probably not going to follow that route again.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've probably done it incidentally, just by speaking the truth and sticking to the real science, which here we are on Real Science Radio. And now you mentioned that the footprints still exist. You still have the footprints. Are these footprints still on the ground? Where are they?
Okay. Limestone does have a way of, over a period of time, eroding.
Sure.
The atmospheric conditions form carbonic acid over a period of months and years, so the details are compromised. Understanding that, we did not remove anything from the bed of the river, but on private property, we have been able to assimilate from private property a number of the footprints, and we've been able to subject them to spiral CAT scan analysis, and we have those here at the museum. Anyone, a contributor, an avowed atheist, a committed Christian and creationist, is certainly welcome to see them. Now, we have them under special glass cover because it would only take a few minutes for someone to try to destroy them. And so we have the footprints here in the museum, and we have special security as well.
Okay, you've mentioned that you have, like, the compression density of these validates that they're real. They're not, because I know that there were some fake ones made, I believe, years ago, because you can make money making fake fossils, or you can try to discredit something like Paluxy by throwing in fake ones and say, hey, look, there's fake footprints. But you've got a process that validates. I personally
examined one of the fake prints. We had it for a period of time to analyze, and you can tell the structural mechanism that George Adams used to carve that print, and all of that's very evident over a period of time. That shows on the surface, but the genuine prints do not have any of that falsified material.
And let's get back to, were there any footprints that were destroyed?
Well, you had mentioned that you have special security, so I imagine these footprints are under some kind of threat.
Oh, they are, certainly. Now, even though I've been excavating, by excavating, simply exposing, when we could do so, the Taylor Trail in the bed of the river, and I spent decades there and probably have more hours logged than any other individual working there. But you can't excavate in the river, and we've never excavated there. We excavate on private property. Mm-hmm. And there was evidence that one of the key footprints, minus 3B, a clear human footprint, was destroyed. We have photographs before and after. We also have molds before and after. I was not present when that occurred. I was in another country lecturing, and we have reports of individuals being seen going into the river with an iron bar, and then a few days later, when we went back to examine those, what was there that we had been studying for some period of time, damage was done. But I personally did not see any activities or any individual, I was out of the country at that time.
Yeah.
So I'll have to leave it to others who may have seen them.
Yeah, unfortunately, you've got footprints that you've excavated, like you said, and you've got the scientific evidence that these are real. These aren't faked. Now, I did read something that the Dallas Forensics Department for their police also validated that these were actual human footprints.
That is correct. And he was not representing the department. He was here on a little vacation away from his responsibilities, but he clearly validated this.
Oh, wow.
Validated one of the series of prints.
Okay.
In fact, he was present at the time it was excavated. That's always good.
Yeah. So it sounds like there is evidence possibly out there for destroyed footprints. But you know what, Dr. Baugh? At this point, how much does that matter? Because are they going to go and destroy all the soft tissue now?
Yeah,
That's
right.
a lot of soft tissue around the world. They have to go destroy. It's just not going to happen.
And the record of the soft tissue, like Mary Schweitzer found in supposed 65 million year old T-Rex, DNA, soft tissue, stretchy tissue, and she stood her ground. At first she was opposed by her colleagues,
big time.
Right?
And commend her for standing her ground. So finally, out of the woodwork, individuals, bona fide credentialed scientists said, "Well, I haven't published on this, but I've had this information for a few decades, so I guess I'd better." And so now the academic community has published throughout the geologic column soft tissue being found. But here at the Creation Evidence Museum, due to the gift of a very fine family, we have an actual laboratory where vetted scholars can come in and actually discover or falsify soft tissue in a particular dinosaur or other fossil of so-called antiquity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so you would welcome Lawrence Krauss could go, or who's my other favorite? Inhale deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Neil deGrasse Tyson. You'd welcome them in to falsify?
Certainly, as long as they behave themselves. Certainly. We have nothing to hide. And the equipment has been manufactured. It's all new equipment, and we have credentialed individuals operating the microscopes and so forth. Certainly, we would welcome these individuals to come and find out for themselves. And hopefully they wouldn't take the same position Richard Dawkins is. We welcome Richard Dawkins to come find out for himself, discover soft tissue, even in the stomach of a Moroccan trilobite, which blows
That's amazing.
the whole theory of evolution from start to finish.
That's incredible. Back to Mary
I
Schweitzer.
hope he's listening to the broadcast.
Yeah, well, we'll send him an email.
Send him a link.
Try to reach out to him and see if he'll, and hopefully he'll subscribe to the channel.
That'd be great.
So we just recently started airing on YouTube. So those listening on audio, which is most of our audience, if you get a chance, check out our video, subscribe to it. We provide a lot more graphics. You're going to see a lot of some of the stuff that Dr. Baugh's talking about. And Dr. Baugh, getting back to Mary Schweitzer, I remember when she first reported this, Discover magazine said that, quote, she had erased a line between the present and the past, which was an amazing admission by Discover magazine. Yeah. They're no friends of creationists. But one of the things it said in that article was, I believe it was a Kansas State paleontologist who said, "Oh, this isn't real. It's not true." And Mary Schweitzer asked him, "Well, what evidence would convince you?" And he said, "Nothing will.
No evidence.
Dinosaurs can't possibly have soft tissue."
Wow.
Well, I live in that arena, so I'm not surprised with that answer.
Yeah.
But there is an answer to all of the evolutionary objections. For instance, and briefly, one of the reasons so many people adopt evolution is they can't understand why a beneficent God would create things like viruses and bacteria and microbes and pathogens.
Sure.
He must have a penchant to be very cruel if he created them, so there has to be no God. Well, actually, a couple of colleagues of mine, in our biosphere, we have a publishing biologist, Dr. Jerry Bergman, has 9 college degrees in science, too.
Yeah, he's amazing. Very prolific writer.
Yes.
He's awesome.
And he's He's our publishing biologist for the biosphere. He just wrote a new book, co-authored by Jim Hoff. Jim Hoff built the world's fastest supercomputers, and he and his colleagues researched and patented the fiber optic system that permits all 15 billion cell phones in the world to work without getting communication mixed up. And he's the co-author of this new book that's just off the press. Why did God make viruses, bacteria, pathogens, etc.? And they give an incredible answer, a truthful answer. And so there is an answer, an academic answer, a biblical answer, a truthful answer to all the objections of the evolutionary community. But basically, that community will not listen because they're committed to an ideology, which means they must give an account to a creator.
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Right, right. And they refuse to retain the knowledge of God in their mind.
Yeah.
They refuse.
Yes.
Invisible
That's
attributes
sad.
are clearly seen so that they will be without excuse. They won't have a little excuse like, well, I learned this in public school, this and that. I feel sorry for the teachers who taught them that. But in the end, the evidence is so overwhelming, they will be without excuse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, Dr. Baugh, I was going to high school between 1982 and 1986 in West Texas.
Yeah.
And I remember my science teacher simply dismissing the Paluxy footprints as fraudulent and that it had been proved. This was probably 1982, 4, right in there. They just they said it was fraudulent, and we as public high school students and generally rebellious little punks, we didn't really look into it. We took what our teacher said to be the truth, that this is a bunch of fundamentalists, ignorant fundamentalists, basically scamming everybody. And I wish I would have taken the time to go, because I was only a few hundred miles away. I wish I'd have taken the time to go and investigate it myself. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache in my life.
Yeah. So that's
Well,
what
you have modeled an absolute truth, and the reason my life is committed to simply researching and declaring the truth, especially creation versus evolution, was that I was told a lie and I bought it, and I'd like to save as many people from that agony as possible. And see, the thing is, it's not too late to come on and see the evidence now. We have it inside the museum.
Yeah.
And we're open Wednesday through Saturday, 10 to 4, Central Standard Time. And people come from Russia, from China, from the South Pacific, from Europe to see the evidence.
So this is Glen Rose,
And,
Texas.
Glen Rose, Texas, the Creation Evidence Museum. It's open.
What's the easiest way to get there? If someone say, hey, they're going to map out a flight into where, like San Antonio, Dallas, what's the quickest way to get there?
DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, we're an hour and a half out of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, Southwest.
Okay.
And we're en route to Dinosaur Valley State Park, and it's pretty hard to miss us. And we now have a nice professional profile. We lived with a trailer profile for years, but you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And the controversy was so heated, to generate funding was almost impossible. So it had to be done one step at a time. But now we have a very professional profile, professional staff, university graduates in every basic area.
Yeah, I think Wiki still has you as just having a double wide trailer, if I recall.
Oh, that's one of their disparaging remarks, is that you founded the museum in a double wide trailer, but what they don't understand is that if you lived in West Texas back in the 1980s, a double wide, that was a status symbol. So when I read that, I was like, well, this guy's obviously got his act together. He's got a double wide. I grew up out there. I know what that's like.
That's right, double wide. That's status symbol. Yes. That's high, tall cotton, as we say.
There you go. There you go. And that's a well doing. Can you say that again? How you've fought against your enemies?
Well-doing, we put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. And
there we
go. The Scripture says.
Exactly.
Because They actually, the proponents of these theories and the aggressive individuals do not want an answer. They want to silence the other side. In fact, that's what the legal system has done to silence evolution in the public school system as genuine science. And in general,
Sure.
you can't even talk about it.
Right,
and that's
right.
a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
So we just continue to do the right thing, and God opens the right doors and provides the right means to do scientific research that's publishable. And anyone can come and see this. You can look through glass within inches away and watch the work being done with the microscopes. And you can watch, if someone cares enough, even off the street, they can sit in the gallery, watch the process of dinosaur bones being selected or other so-called ancient artifacts, watch the slides being prepared, and watch on monitors and see what our technicians are actually discovering, and they can watch that discovery simultaneously. And if anyone like Richard Dawkins or his colleagues will behave themselves and try to do bona fide science, they're welcome to come in and actually make discoveries.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, you actually started out at least believing in an old Earth. I spent 30 years believing that God created dinosaurs as pets for millions of years. I was mad when I found, I started looking at the evidence for creation and for a younger, I think the Earth is really old. 6,000 years is really old.
Seems like a long time.
But I was actually kind of mad in a way, mad at myself and just mad that I was brainwashed, because I never saw this other evidence. It was never exposed to me through the years that I went to public schools, went through college, would go to, watch TV, all these different things. I never even heard about it until a guy at work said, evolution is a proven fact. And I didn't believe that. I wasn't that naive, but I did believe in millions of years. So that's why we do this radio show. And Dr. Baugh, that's why you've done what you've done for so long, your TV show. In fact, you even got a mission out of your museum. I think we were talking off air. You've been to Fiji quite a few times. When I first heard that, I'm like, oh, good for you. You need some time off, and you need to go get some sun and enjoy the beach. But you actually have a mission out there, correct?
Oh, yes. In fact, I told some of my staff members a couple of weeks ago, I've been in 22 countries. I've lectured on creation and the gospel in 22 countries, but I've never spent an hour sitting on the beach, because I go there with a purpose. I'm not against sitting on the beach, but I have better things to do when I'm there. And by the way, you mentioned something a moment ago. The late Dr. Henry Morris III, who for years was the president of Institute for Creation Research, when they first moved to the Dallas area, the press interviewed them and said, Dr. Morris, the journalist said, Dr. Morris, doesn't the world look old? Dr. Morris said, no, it looks flooded.
I like that. That's a great answer.
That was profoundly true.
Amen.
Yeah, there's a mile worth of sediment buried all over the planet. That's some pretty good evidence that some kind of water disaster happened in the past. I mean, that's a lot of sediment,
right.
a mile average deep.
Yeah.
That happens to have in certain, they have, I think you mentioned earlier, the whole dinosaur footprints with man footprints, it destroys their geologic column, because you're not supposed to find those things together. That's one of their big darlings.
Well, their geologic column is their Bible.
Yeah.
That's their paradigm, and it destroys it, so they're left bankrupt.
Yeah.
Well,
And thank you for what you're doing, man, the truth that you're getting out. Families need this truth, and families need encouragement.
Amen.
These are days of chaos, no matter where we look. But there's hope. There's genuine hope in the truth of creation, and there's personal hope in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Yep,
And if you want to visit a museum whose efforts will stand the test of time, I want to encourage everyone in the audience to make a trip to the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. I plan to take my family. We've got to come and see.
Absolutely.
And make up for that trip I should have taken back around 1984, Dr. Baugh.
All right.
Maybe
let me know when you're coming, and we'll give you a very special favor.
All right.
Yeah, we'll send each other on assignment.
That's it. We'll go on
each have our
assignment.
assignment trip to Glen Rose. Do you have a website by any chance, Dr. Baugh, for your museum?
Yes. creationevidence.org.
Great. Okay.
creationevidence.org.
We will link to that.
When you come,
Yep.
bring your cameras because the truth is obvious, and we can document selection to discovery, and I think your audience would enjoy it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Dr. Baugh, what an honor this was to have you on the show.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen.
Tremendous.
And thank you for preaching the gospel, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you. God bless you.
The privilege is mine. God bless you, man.
God bless you. So for Doug McBurney, I'm Fred Williams of Real Science Radio. May God bless you.